The Star Trek references in Futurama are abundant and hilarious, and while the show is over now, it's still fun to look back and reminisce on the jokes made by the Planet Express crew and the nods to one of Fry's favourite shows from his time back in the 20th century. I'm Ewan, I love Futurama and Star Trek, and so here is every Star Trek reference in Futurama. Number 30. Leonard Nimoy in Space Pilot 3000. Futurama's first episode has more than a few references to Star Trek within it. The episode itself parodies part of the plot of the Next Generation episode, The Neutral Zone, which has 3 humans who had been cryogenically frozen in the late 20th century, thawed in the future the series is set in. These humans then have to adjust to their new life, which is kind of basically the same premise as Futurama. Fry also comments on the doors of the future, which slide open, as being like the doors in Star Trek. This is immediately followed by one of the doors closing on him. Obviously, the biggest Star Trek reference within the episode, though, is the appearance of Leonard Nimoy's head, which Fry meets when hiding out in the Head Museum. The head is voiced by the late Nimoy himself. Finally, when Fry attempts to pilot the ship, the noises used are identical to the noises made by the USS Enterprise in the original series. Number 29. The chest communicator in A Flight to Remember. In Star Trek The Next Generation, the communicators that were used in the original series were replaced with badges that the crew members pressed to communicate. This is referenced in the episode of Futurama, A Flight to Remember. The reference to Star Trek comes midway through the episode when Bender goes to buy 2 drinks for him and the upper-class robot he is trying to seduce. When the bartender needs to signal security on the Titanic after Bender refuses to pay for his drink, he touches his chest to communicate with them. While the bartender doesn't have an actual badge, this moment is a clear reference to the series. Number 28. The Federation in Brannigan Begin Again. Beyond the actual reference within the episode, Brannigan is a clear parody of Kirk and is described in the DVD commentary to Lovelabor's Lost in Space as 40% Kirk and 60% Shatner. This is clear from his character design and mannerisms, which place him as a space captain who, if he wasn't already meant to be Kirk, definitely thought he was. As for the actual clear reference within the episode, at one point Brannigan tries to explain to Fry what dupe is. He likens it to the United Nations, which Fry, unsurprisingly, does not understand. Hermes then says it's like the Federation, which makes it very clear to Fry, who perfectly understands it once it is explained in the reference. Number 27. FARR in Why Must I Be a Crustacean in Love? The episode Why Must I Be a Crustacean in Love follows Zoidberg going to his home planet during mating season to find a sexy lady crab to mate with. And it's one of Futurama's best episodes. It's also a clear parody of the episode Amok Time, in which Spock must travel back to Vulcan because he's experiencing PON-FARR. PON-FARR, which is parodied by the condition that Zoidberg is experiencing, is a time in which Vulcans enter heat and must mate, or they'll die. In Star Trek, the condition occurs within Vulcans every 7 years. Zoidberg enters this state in the episode and fights with Fry after he sees the woman of his dreams, Edna, with her caviar on his lips. A second minor reference occurs in the episode too. When Fry and Zoidberg fight, the anthem of Zoidberg's planet is played. The anthem is simply the fight music from that same episode, and what an anthem it is. Number 26. Evil Beards in The Lesser of Two Evils. The Lesser of Two Evils introduces Flexo. Flexo is another bending robot like Bender. Leela assumes Flexo is evil and blames him when a valuable package goes missing, and this is largely because Flexo just has a goatee. While the goatee is somewhat universal in media to show someone evil, sorry for anyone who does actually have a goatee, I think they're really cool, it is a clear reference here to Mirror Universe Spock from the original series. In the episode Mirror Mirror, a transporter malfunction swaps Kirk, McCoy, Scotty, and Uhura with their counterparts in the Mirror Universe. The Mirror Universe is one that is far darker than the Prime Universe. In it, the Federation has been replaced by the Terran Empire, and they are far more bloodthirsty and violent. In the Mirror Universe, they meet Mirror Spock, who is notable for sporting a goatee. Number 25. Assimilation in Raging Bender. When mentioning the word assimilation in relation to Star Trek, one word comes to mind: Borg. In the episode Raging Bender, the Borg do not make an appearance, although there is a similar kind of assimilation that takes place, and it's really funny. The episode features a brain slug which latches onto Hermes and assimilates him. His actions mirror those of characters assimilated by the Borg in Star Trek, in that part of this is his desire to assimilate others. A slug tries to assimilate Fry too, but dies due to the lack of brain activity. Unlike the Borg though, de-assimilating is easy, as all the crew need to do is remove the brain slug. Number 24. Pike's chair in A Clone of My Own. In the episode, A Clone of My Own, Professor Farnsworth becomes obsessed with his own mortality after his 150th birthday party and decides to name his successor at Planet Express. To the disappointment of the entire Planet Express crew, this successor ends up being the Professor's clone, a 12-year-old version of himself named Qbert. During the Professor's birthday party, the only living ex-crew member of the Professor's is in attendance. He resembles Captain Pike from the 2 episodes The Menagerie Part 1 and The Menagerie Part 2, complete with robotic wheelchair and beeping, which he uses to tell one joke. Beep. Oh, it's pretty funny. Number 23. Nichelle Nichols in Anthology of Interest Number 1. In the 3rd story of Anthology of Interest 1, Fry asks what would have happened if he'd never been frozen. In the alternate timeline, he narrowly avoids being frozen, but sees the future through a hole in the space-time continuum. While telling this to his boss, he is overheard by Stephen Hawking, who happens to be a regular at Fry's workplace, Panucci's Pizza. Fry is abducted on his way home and introduced to the group known as the Vice Presidential Action Rangers. One of the members of this group is Nichelle Nichols, who is shown in full original series getup. Number 22. The data parallels in the BiROBOT of ICE-CATRAZ. The BiROBOT of ICE-CATRAZ parallels the Next Generation episode Thine Own Self. In the Star Trek episode, Data crashes on a planet with a pre-industrial civilization after trying to track a probe containing radioactive materials. The crash causes him to lose his memory and be integrated into the society, having no idea who he is. By the time the crew of the Enterprise arrive, Data has been killed by a resident of the community. Knowing that Data has simply been deactivated though, they just reactivate him, which causes him to reboot and regain his memories, although he has no idea of what actually happened during his time within the community. This particular episode of Futurama has a similar plot in which Bender suffers a serious head injury and loses his memory of who he is, thinking that he's actually a penguin once he wakes up surrounded by penguins. He integrates, like Data, into the community. However, when Leela shoots him in the head, he reboots and regains the memories of who he is, returning to his normal self and life. Number 21. Another Data parallel in Roswell That Ends Well. Roswell That Ends Well has a few Star Trek references. The notable one is that the method of travel they use is similar to the time travel in Star Trek First Contact. The episode follows the crew traveling back in time to Roswell, New Mexico, and becoming the supposed alien crash landing that took place there. While he's there, Fry meets his granddad Enos. In an attempt to save Enos' life and prevent himself from ceasing to exist, Fry kills him, and thinking he isn't actually Enos and his girlfriend Mildred's grandson, Fry sleeps with Mildred, inadvertently becoming his own grandfather. The crew end up escaping the 40s back to their own time, but drop Bender's head in the desert. Realizing he's a robot who can essentially last forever, they go back to the desert in their time and dig him up, where he's still there, fine, although having lived over 1,000 years on his lonesome. This in itself is a reference to the Next Generation episode Time's Arrow, in which the same thing happens to Data. The final small reference is in the diner that they go to in the 40s. When Fry flips up the table and almost castrates Enos, there is a Federation logo on the table, nodding back to Star Trek yet again. Number 20. The references in The Day the Earth Stood Stupid. The episode The Day the Earth Stood Stupid bears some striking similarities to the original series episode Operation Annihilate. The Futurama episode follows the attack of a species of hyper-intelligent brains attacking planet by planet, crossing the galaxy, destroying civilizations, and eventually attacking Earth. The crew are tracking these destroyed planets before the brains arrive, but the brains turn out to be a species intent on destroying all life on Earth as well, and it turns out only Fry is immune to their powers of making everyone on the planet dumb. This is told to Leela by the Niblonian Council, who have been fighting the brains since the dawn of time. This is similar to the Star Trek episode in which the Enterprise is tracking a series of planets whose residents have gone insane and destroyed their own civilization. While the end result is not flying brains, it turns out each planet is being attacked by a series of single-celled organisms that are sending people insane. Number 19. Spock product placement in That's Lobstertainment. The reference in That's Lobstertainment is a small one. The reference comes during the Academy Awards. A category entitled Best Product Placement features Star Trek The Pepsi Generation and a picture of Spock holding a can of Pepsi. Number 18. Fisherman's Wharf in Bendin in the Wind. Bendin in the Wind follows the story of Bender attempting to be a folk singer along with big musician Beck. The Star Trek reference is in San Francisco, where the Fisherman's Wharf has been renamed to the Fisherman's Wharf, as in WORF, in honor of Worf, the Enterprise's chief of security in The Next Generation. Number 17. TRICORDER in Anthology of Interest number 2. The Anthology of Interest returns in Anthology of Interest 2, and it might just be the best one. Like, good luck getting Gloria Estefan's conga out of your head after watching Bender dance the night away as a human. It's brilliant. When the Planet Express crew cannot get Bender to respond after he indulges in all the excesses known to man, Zoidberg scans him to see if he is still alive, concluding that he has died. The reference to Star Trek is what Zoidberg scans him with. Zoidberg pulls out an original series tricorder and scans the man's enormous frame. The noises the tricorder emits are not those of the ones seen in the show though, but the noise of the communicators in Star Trek Enterprise. Number 16. The cast in Where No Fan Has Gone Before. Where No Fan Has Gone Before is the pinnacle of Star Trek references within Futurama, so much so that it features the voice cast of the original series, minus DeForest Kelley, who had died, and James Doohan, who had refused, thus giving us Welshie instead of Scotty. The episode follows the crew as they travel to a planet called Omega-3 to find the dumped tapes of Star Trek, since the show has been made illegal on Earth after the Star Trek Wars, not to be confused with the Star Wars Trek. There they find the members of the original crew with new bodies given to them by an energy being called Melvar, who became a Trekkie after watching all the dumped tapes. Melvar forces the group to engage in Star Trek conventions forever until he gains more admiration for the Planet Express crew after they try to fight him and save the cast members. While about to destroy them, Melvar's mother appears and tells them to come home for dinner, giving the crew a chance to escape. However, Melvar follows them in a Klingon bird of prey until Fry convinces him not to build his entire life around Star Trek, and he leaves. Number 15. The HOLO-SHED in Kith Gets Knocked Up a Notch. In the episode, Amy and Kith visit the HOLO-SHED, a clear nod to the holodeck from all series of Star Trek. Kith explains that nothing in there can hurt you except when it malfunctions and the holograms become real. This is, of course, what happens. The holodeck malfunctions often in Star Trek, so often that there is actually a trope named after it in the show. The episode also references Star Trek in a couple of other ways. When the crew are being treated in the sick bay, they are being treated by a doctor called Vaines McGee, a clear nod to Bones McCoy from the original series. Amy's calendar also features a date to hang out with Walter Koenig, misspelled the actor who played Anton Chekhov in the original series. Number 14. Wrath-OR-CONRAIL in the 30% Iron Chef. The 30% Iron Chef follows Bender as he attempts to become a chef, despite having a complete lack of taste and being generally terrible at cooking. He runs away from the crew when he overheard them talking about how awful the food he made was, and after trying and failing to convince Elzar to teach him how to cook, Bender becomes a traveling hobo, determined to learn the art of culinary expertise. It is during one of these scenes that the Star Trek reference comes in. As Bender is traveling, he travels on the Wrath-OR-CONRAIL, a clear reference to Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan and its main antagonist, Khan Noonien Singh. Number 13. The Klingon Embassy in A Taste of Freedom. A Taste of Freedom is an episode that follows Zoidberg. In the episode, while celebrating how free Earth and America are, he eats the Earthican flag, a crime that the populace reacts more than poorly to. While Zoidberg claims this is an act of freedom, it is seen as desecrating the flag. With that in mind, Zoidberg flees to the Decapolian Embassy, and while on the way passes the Klingon Embassy, which looks more like a Barbie playset than a warlike compound the species would typically be found in Star Trek. Number 12. The destruction of Deep Space Nine in Teenage Mutant Leela's Hurdles. Teenage Mutant Leela's Hurdles features a big Star Trek reference in the episode. In the beginning of the episode, while the professor is searching for his escaped gargoyle, Pazuzu, he turns on the ship's headlights/phasers. These hit and destroy a space station that looks suspiciously like Deep Space Nine. Number 11. The funeral in The Sting. The Sting follows Leela after Fry dies trying to save her from the sting of a giant space bee. Planet Express holds a funeral for Fry, and it is very similar to both Spock's funeral in The Wrath of Khan and Janeway's funeral in the Voyager episode Coda, with Fry's coffin being shot out into space. This goes a little bit further with the Voyager reference, as it has the same pod shot in space. Number 10. Commander Riker's Island in 300 Big Boys. The reference here comes in Kith's story. Kith decides to spend his tax rebate from Earth's successful invasion of a spider planet by buying Amy a watch. He accidentally drops the watch though, and it is swallowed by the whale that Leela is set to swim with the following day. He goes after it, but is briefly arrested under suspicion of stealing ambergris. While he is arrested, he is sent to Commander Riker's Island, a play on the real prison in the East River in New York, called Riker's Island. The name has been changed in classic Futurama fashion to honor Commander Riker, Jean-Luc Picard's second in command in The Next Generation. Number 9. Controlling the ship in Bender's Big Score. At the beginning of Bender's Big Score, Hermes is decapitated and has to spend some time as a head in a jar while his body is being repaired. In the final battle of the movie, his head is wired directly into the ship's main control. This mirrors what the crew of the Enterprise do with Data in the Next Generation episode Disaster, and it's just as great in Futurama as it was in Star Trek. Number 8. Assimilation again in The Beast with a Billion Backs. There is another example of assimilation in the second Futurama film, The Beast with a Billion Backs. The Beast with a Billion Backs begins as a hole opened up at the end of Bender's Big Score, allows an extra-dimensional creature named Yivo to communicate with the inhabitants of the universe. Yivo uses tentacles to link all the inhabitants of the Earth into its hive mind of love. Like the brain slugs, this assimilation is reminiscent of the Borg assimilating species that they come across. Yivo doesn't seek to conquer, but it brings all it finds into itself. While the Borg is forceful though, Yivo is very accepting of the people of the universe, and even suggests that they go out on a date before they get serious. This allows for a second Star Trek reference in the film. Both before and after the date, a group of interstellar representatives sit in a conference room and discuss plans. The conference room has a 3-screen setup that is reminiscent of the setup that existed on the original Enterprise in the original series. Number 7. George Takei and Scott Bakula in Bender's Game. Bender's Game, the third movie in the Futurama quartet, is perhaps the one with the strangest plot. The film follows the story of the crew getting sucked into an alternate fantasy reality based around Dungeons and Dragons. Act 1 of Bender's Game features the crew getting into a demolition derby though, after Leela is insulted by some trucker. Two of the entrants of the derby are George Takei and Scott Bakula. The two are flying in one-person Star Trek-style ships, with Takei flying an NX-class ship similar to the original Enterprise, while Bakula travels in an Ambassador-class ship. Before Takei destroys Bakula and is then destroyed himself, he yells at him saying, "Way to kill the franchise, Bakula." Number 6. The Genesis Wave in Into the Wild Green Yonder. The references are all minor for Into the Wild Green Yonder. The first is right at the beginning of the film. There is an explosion in deep space that has a similar effect to the Genesis Wave at the end of Wrath-of-Khan, bringing life to barren planets. This is not the only reference to Wrath-of-Khan in the film. While the crew arrive at Mars Vegas, they fly past the Botany Bay Hotel, named after Khan's infamous ship. The Dark One's appearance as a leech that Leela wants to save even mirrors the worms from SETI Alpha 5 that Khan uses to control Chekhov and give every child who saw that scene too early lots of nightmares. Number 5. V. Ginny in In-A-GADDA-DA-LEELA. In-A-GADDA-DA-LEELA starts with a simple premise. A death sphere called V. Ginny is traveling the universe, destroying planets, and is heading to Earth. V. Ginny is already a clear reference to the Vajir and Nomad satellites. Nomad was a satellite searching new life that merged with another satellite and started wiping out life it deemed imperfect in Star Trek. This is mirrored in the fact that V. Ginny is a merge of the V-Chip satellite and the US Air Force flying Destiny. As a result, it has changed its purpose, much like Nomad, and has begun wiping out planets and life it deems indecent, matching V-Chip's original purpose as a satellite designed to censor indecent TV shows. The reference to Vajir is also clear in the name. V. Ginny is what remains of the letters of V-Chip combined with the end of the US Air Force flying Destiny, while Vajir remains as the only readable letters on the satellite originally Voyager 6. The Star Trek references continue in the fact that the Professor seeks to identify V. Ginny in Janeway's guide, referencing Catherine Janeway, captain of the USS Voyager. Number 4. The Vulcan Nerve Pinch in Proposition Infinity. Proposition Infinity was an episode that satirized those opposed to gay marriage in the wake of the 2008 vote on the topic in California. The Star Trek references begin with a Vulcan nerve pinch used by a cop at the beginning who says he's gonna Spock you out. The main reference, though, comes from the appearance of George Takei within the episode, who moderates a debate on the issue of robosexual marriage. As a gay man and LGBT activist, the issue of gay marriage was personal to Takei, and his appearance in the episode was likely not a coincidence. Number 3. Tholian ships in Decision 3012. Decision 3012, like Proposition Infinity, takes a sci-fi comedy view on real-life issues. The episode focuses on the racist birther movement that accompanied Barack Obama's presidency, with a presidential candidate having his place of birth questioned as he ran against Richard Nixon. In the episode, it turns out that Travis was born on Earth in the future and has come back to stop Nixon winning, as his proposal to build a border wall along the southern border of the solar system, yikes, will result in a robot uprising. It's this wall that contains the episode's Star Trek reference. In the future that is shown when Travers is explaining his reality, the wall being built is also in full view. The ships being used for the building resemble the Tholian ships in the original series episode, the Tholian Web. Number 2. George Takei in Zap Dingbat. The episode follows Leela as her parents get divorced and her mum begins working with, and then dating, Zap Brannigan. The track reference comes early on in the episode in a bar where George Takei's head is watching a holographic show of a dancer put on by a band parodying the Cantina Band from Star Wars. While the figure twirls, Takei's head is shown on a nearby table watching intently. Takei then says, "Dance, slave, dance" at the figure before the scene moves on, and there is way too much to unpack there, so let's move on. And number 1. Patrick Stewart in 31st Century Fox. 31st Century Fox is another episode with a political message to it. The episode focuses on fox hunting, and in it, while getting new uniforms, Bender buys a fox hunting uniform, and while initially into fox hunting, goes against it when he finds out the fox that they're actually hunting is a robot. The reference in the episode isn't so much a reference to Star Trek itself, but instead a cameo. This time it is Patrick Stewart who plays the master of the hunt, who in turn is also revealed to be a robot. The cameo is fun, and Stewart, being the actor that he is, pulls it off exactly as well as you'd expect. And that was, hopefully, every single Star Trek reference in Futurama. Which one's your favourite? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, and do subscribe to Trek Culture so you don't miss any more Trek-based content coming to you every single week. I've been Ewan, and I will see you next time. Bye!